welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you all of Av's latest treats collection for summer. If you're familiar with my channel, you probably have seen me talk about and share all of Av before. They're a small indie brand based in Massachusetts and they come out with these seasonal collections that lately have been including new and returning shades, which I'm a big fan of that kind of concept because it just brings back some previous fan favorites while also giving us a couple of new things to look forward to. So the treats collection is a 5-piece lineup featuring mainly creams, and 2 of the polishes in here are new. So as always, I will share some more of my thoughts for the end after comparisons. For now, let me just show you the swatches. The first returning shade we have is called Skylight, and this one is described as a bright, clear sky blue cream for everyone who remembers the blue raspberry era. This had a super lush formula, just so creamy, buttery smooth to apply, really nice and even coverage as well, as you can see on the first coat. Not quite a one coater, but honestly, depending on how short your nails are, this could be one of those shades that you just grab when you're in a rush. But as usual, I am doing 2 coats for all of my swatches and it is fully opaque. This is such a gorgeous color, really reminds me of a bright, clear day. The next returning shade is called Easy, described as a medium purple with cool undertones, and this is inspired by the wildly colored 90s condiment that nobody asked for and everybody loved anyway. I don't agree with that because I certainly did not love that purple ketchup. I would love to know whether I'm alone in that or not, but either way, this had another fantastic formula, really great coverage on the first coat, again, another 2-coater, and overall, I agree with how it's described being a medium, dusty, cool purple. The first of the new shades is called Bubble, and this is described as a vivid coral pink cream, which apparently is inspired by how big you can blow your bubblegum. I definitely think this is a bit warmer toned than pink bubblegum, but either way, I love this color. I just love these medium, warm toned corally pinks so much, especially for this time of year. I just think it's a beautiful color that's so flattering, and it's another easy 2-coater. The last of the returning shades is called Pixy, and this one is described as a fiery coral with a shimmery pink shimmer. And this one is inspired by the iconic Pixy sticks. I absolutely love those so much. And naturally, this being another corally kind of shade, I also really love it. The shimmer is definitely on the subtle side. It's not one of those super glowy in-your-face shimmers, but it does have a nice little subtle sparkle. And I think because it's a shimmer, it leans in the ever so slightly crelly formula, so there is like a hint of nail line, but it's still incredibly pigmented and buildable. And rounding out the collection is the last new shade called Wild Cherry, which is a classic, bold cherry red cream. And I'm sure you can tell I was surprised to read that this is described as a cream because hopefully you can see there is a decent amount of nail line showing. I feel like this really performed like a super pigmented jelly, for example, having this almost glassy translucent effect. I know some reds just kind of tend to be that way. They're not really creamy the way that the other polishes are in this collection, but yeah, even on 3 coats, I could still see my nail line, so I would kind of just call this like a jelly, maybe a crelly, but not really a cream. So don't expect the same level of opacity as you saw with the other shades. Now moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Skylight and looking at it next to Xiala, which I thought is another true sky blue cream from Olive Ave. And in the bottle, they kind of look similar, but on the nail, I think you can definitely tell a difference where Skylight is a little bit darker, almost having a drop of cobalt blue in it, while Xiala is maybe a little bit more white based. So just to compare it to a true cobalt blue, I pulled out the original Sally Hansen's Pacific Blue, which you can see is several shades darker. It is like very strong, vibrant cobalt blue, but I think the closest that I have in my collection is Static Nails Cabana Boy, which kind of has a similar powdery vibe, but that one's actually a little bit more pastel. Moving on to Easy, I think the closest purple from Olive Ave I have is Santa Rita, which came out in their spring collection last year. That one does have a gold shimmer in it, so it's not, you know, just a plain purple cream, but even still the base purple is more of this warmer toned shade, a little bit lighter, and for a cooler purple, I pulled out ILNP's High Score, but that is just way too vibrant and saturated. For some other kind of mid-toned purples, I then pulled out China Glaze's Left My Heart in Havana and Holo Taco's Resting Witch Face, which I also knew these weren't going to be exact dupes because they also are a bit too vibrant or saturated. They don't have that same dusty gray undertone that Easy has, but they're just the closest that I have in my collection. Next for Bubble, here is Olive Ave's Amaryllis and Vernal, which are two lighter pinks in a warmer and more neutral undertone. So they're just different overall. For some slightly darker pinks, or coral shades rather, I pulled out Crake and Theoretical. Crake is a true cream, but it's a lot more of that reddish coral shade, while Theoretical is like an orangey coral, not really pink, but it does have a gold shimmer. So it's kind of close in value, just slightly different. And the closest pink that I think I have to this is Zoya Kay, which is just a nice mid-toned pink cream, though as I'm sure you can tell, Kay is a little bit cooler toned, but on the nail it's kind of hard to tell apart. Like, they are almost the same exact value or level of saturation and brightness. Again, it's just a slight difference in undertone. And for reference, I did want to show Bubble next to ILNP's Pink Slush and Cirque's Bubblegum Skies, which are both these pink jelly and crelly finishes, so not creams, but at least in the bottle, these look like the closest shades of pink. Next for Pixy, I first pulled out Lisa, which is another shimmer from Olive Ave, but this one is a lot more glowy, as I'm sure you can see. It does have more of a blue shimmer in a hot pink sort of base, so while it might be kind of hard to see on the nail, it is just cooler toned overall. So for a warmer toned pink, I pulled out Strawberry, which is a plain cream. There's no shimmer in it, but it is really similar to the base color of Pixy. It's maybe a hair or two lighter. Some other shades I thought were worth comparing were Cracked Polish's 90 Degrees from their recent Summer Oasis collection. That one is a little bit more neon though, so it just stands out more on the nail. I actually think Morgan Taylor's Let's Grab a Bite from their Little Mermaid collection a few years ago is surprisingly closer. It's just maybe more red orange versus red pink. Then for Wild Cherry, I first pulled out Dracarys, which is a super vibrant red orange leaning shade. So hopefully you can see it definitely is very orange compared to how red Wild Cherry is. I thought there was a little bit of orange undertone in Wild Cherry, so then I pulled out Holo Taco's Hot Take, but again, that one leans a little closer to Dracarys, if anything, so I figured for a more true red, I could show it next to ILNP's Cherry, which does have a similar jelly kind of finish, as you can see. I'm wearing 2 coats of each here, and ILNP's is definitely a bit darker and less warm-toned. And just for reference, some other Olive Ave reds that I have are Garnet and Kindle, which are just so much darker, more of these like fall and wintry reds, a lot more blue toned overall too. Then from Cracked, I pulled out Peep and Grenadine, which are a cream and jelly respectively. I feel like Wild Cherry is kind of an in-between of these two, where it looks a little bit brighter like Peep, but then it has a jelly formula like Grenadine, though on the nail they do look surprisingly similar, at least on camera. In real life, it was a lot easier to see the difference, specifically in the undertone, where Wild Cherry is a bit warmer, but I think it's a little bit lighter than Grenadine too. Then from Cirque, I first pulled out Scarlet Jelly and Lucky Jelly, which are 2 red jellies. Scarlet has a little bit more of this pinky red undertone, while Lucky Jelly is a very neutral red. Maybe it's more blue toned in comparison, so here you can really see that warm undertone of Wild Cherry. And then I realized the shade I was thinking of was Cirque's Red Hot Jelly, which is a much warmer toned, like red-orange kind of jelly shade. They do look incredibly similar in the bottle, but on the nail, I ended up just showing 1 and 2 coats because you could immediately see a difference in not just their undertone, but I guess like the shade or
hue of the color, where Cirque leans even more red-orange, making Wild Cherry look almost neutral in comparison, but I think Cirque is also a little bit lighter as well.
So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for all of Av's Treats collection. As always, I would love to know what you think of these because I thought it's such a fun little lineup for summer. Like, obviously I'm a fan because I love pinky, corally kind of shades, but in general, I think this is such a nice color palette, especially with like the blue and purple sort of tying it in. And as you saw, the formulas were just amazing, just the usual with all of Av. I know a lot of people kind of overlook the brand because they are mainly creams, which, you know, I can understand. I love a good cream every now and then, and it's just always so satisfying to paint with these. For the new shade specifically, I think it's not a surprise that my favorite is Bubble because I love a warm toned medium pink. It's just a classic for me. But then for the returning shades, I think I was kind of tied between being excited over Skylight and Pixy. I wouldn't say those are like some previous favorites or something, where there's other returning shades that Olive has brought back this year that I was like a lot more excited about, but I was happy to see these two because they're just beautiful shades in their own way. If anything, the only one I'm not super thrilled by is Easy, which is kind of funny because even when it first came out a few summers ago, I sort of felt the same way. I think part of it is because it has that like nostalgic, you know, purple ketchup inspiration, which I was never a fan of. It just kind of gives me a weird feeling. And so there is something there, I think, because of the inspiration and just, you know, knowing that, I can't help but picture it every time I see it. But even inspiration aside, like if Walker said, oh, this is, you know, just a nice cool toned purple, I literally can't even think of like what else it could be inspired by. But if it was just anything else, I feel like I'm always picky when it comes to these like darker, dusty or muted purples, but it's also just a lot dustier than what I'm personally craving for this time of year, which is just, you know, a lot brighter, more vibrant shades. So yeah, as always, it's just a personal preference thing, but I'd love to know your thoughts on these down below. These are already available. They launched, I believe, on Thursday. So if you are interested in getting them, I will have Olive's website in the description box. And as a reminder, I'm also an affiliate with Olive. So if you use my code YOGI10, you can save 10% off your order. As always, a big thank you to all of you who do support me through that. But even if you don't plan on picking anything up, because I know there's so much else going on this weekend, I hope that you still like the video if you found it helpful. But yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!